Leap of faith, a mid-19th century translation of the medieval Latin phrase saltus fide. Oxford Dictionary defines it as an act of believing in or attempting something whose existence or outcome cannot be proved. As we meet here today, I'm honored to join WCF in awarding a select few of you a life-changing scholarship to pursue your educational dreams and embark on the next chapter of your life. Accepting this scholarship is in and of itself a leap of faith. What you do next with it is up to you. As we all know, life can hurt. Life can be wildly unfair at times. Life can take away those we love or institute seemingly insurmountable loss. But in the end, you are the catalyst of change, of growth, of rising above. As I say to many, you are stronger than you think. I have the opportunity today to share my story. Admittedly, I'm very much stepping outside my comfort zone. This is the first time I'm publicly talking about it, as I'm an extremely private person by nature. I hope my journey through years of loss and rediscovery and success through education can help you process your experiences or view them from a new perspective. I hope my journey can help inspire you to realize your goals and chase your dreams moving forward from this moment in time. My story begins in late 2007 when my father was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. He quickly underwent radical surgery to remove most of his esophagus and diseased tissue, effectively raising his stomach into his chest. But being such an aggressive cancer, metastasis had already occurred. He deteriorated further not long after surgery, leading to my decision to withdraw from the University of Texas and return home to nurse him. The ensuing months were profound and unbelievably painful. Mark Dine was a true Beatles head. To this day, the song "The Long and Winding Road" brings me to the edge of tears. I remember vividly being at the edge of his at-home hospital bed as the song began on a small portable speaker. As if in sync with the music, his breathing became heavy, and he passed away in concert with the fading orchestra. My dad was my rock, my biggest cheerleader. When I decided to leave my scholarships behind after 2 weeks at the University of San Diego to tour the country with my rock band, he said, "Pursue it with all you got." He wholeheartedly supported my desire to chase my dreams wherever they led. Overcome with emotion, I was not fit to return to university, but knew I needed to return to Austin, Texas to be around my friends, to process the loss of a loved one, and to decide my next steps. Shortly after returning, and through countless late-night philosophical discussions with my best friend Justin, I began making a bucket list of things I wanted to accomplish myself before I died. With the newfound tangible realization that life truly is short, the first leap of faith in this arc of a story was my decision to travel our beautiful country. However, I wasn't just going to purchase a few round-trip plane tickets and return home. I was going to sell off all my major possessions, pack up my small vehicle, and drive through all 50 states, stopping at major national parks, museums, and historical landmarks. Little did I know there was one item on my bucket list that would not only alter my plans, but change my life in more ways than one: skydiving. I always wanted to jump out of an airplane. It was something about that perceived danger, rush of the air, true freedom unlike anything else. And let's be real, it's just super cool. At the time, my desire to jump equaled my desire to check an item off a list, nothing more. But if I was going to do it one time, I was going to do it with my own rig and my own parachute. So I called the local drop zone located in the small, remote farmland community of Lexington, Texas, and scheduled the jump. I signed up for Advanced Freefall 1, or AFF, the first in the series of roughly 25 jumps required to get your A license, allowing you to skydive solo. Depending on the drop zone, you aren't required to begin with a tandem. I woke up to massive butterflies in my stomach and drove 2 hours to the airport. I signed waivers, sat through a 5-hour training class of videos, instruction, outdoor simulation, and testing, then donned a ridiculous neon-colored jumpsuit, strapped on a student rig, and crammed onto the floor of a Cessna 182 with my 2 instructors, headed for 11,000 feet. The entire experience was pure and unadulterated sensory overload, taking off down the dirt runway, rumbling in a small aircraft, climbing in altitude while watching the needle of my wrist altimeter creep slowly around the dial, looking to the back of the plane while my instructors cracked jokes, all the while trying to maintain some semblance of internal calm. Then, finally at altitude, one of my instructors opens the door, spot checks with the pilot, and instructs me to climb out against the push of cold air. At that point, I was truly in the zone, standing outside an airplane, gripping a cold metal strut with my feet atop a small step above the landing gear. With the instructed nod of my head, 1, 2, 3, I was flying, watching the plane above drift into the distance as free fall enveloped my body. A few minutes later, as I flew my canopy to the ground and touched down gently, I knew from that moment this was my next step. I spent the next month chipping away at my A license, progressing through the AFF program, honing my rough skills on coach jumps, and conducting my check dive, an in-air practical exam, the last before receiving an A license. Remember that plan I had to tour the country? Well, the plan remained mostly the same, but I added a new task, skydive in all 50 states. I packed up my car, said goodbye to my friends, my apartment, and my new skydiving family, and headed north through Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska before making a loop through Colorado. I met so many amazing locals in each state, visited so many amazing places, and experienced the true welcoming brother and sisterhood of skydivers. Passing through Colorado, I took part in a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat at a beautiful campground in Elbert. 10 days of no eye contact, no speaking, no touch, up at 4 a.m. and meditating until the evening. It was a remarkable experience. With roughly 50 jumps under my belt, I continued south through New Mexico and west to Arizona. Naive to the operation I was about to encounter, Skydive Arizona, the largest skydiving drop zone in the world. Up until now, I had jumped small mom-and-pop drop zones with one plane and enthusiast skydivers, but I unknowingly stumbled onto an oasis in the middle of expansive desert. Flags of what seemed like every country in the world hung majestically in the main hangar, hundreds of skydivers packing their parachutes and landing while U.S. and foreign military trained at a separate compound. World champion teams in their branded jumpsuits debriefing film jumps frame by frame. Red Bull athletes, multiple Super Otter and Skyvan aircraft taking off every couple minutes with 20-plus jumpers each. The whirring sound of an indoor skydiving tunnel a quarter-mile away. Words can't explain what it felt like to experience it for the first time. At about 75 jumps is where the transition occurred for me, and the flame was lit. The fear of exiting the aircraft began to settle and was replaced with the burning desire to master the sport. There seems to be a disconnect sometimes when I when I speak with others understanding skydiving. Many view skydivers as simple adrenaline junkies with raggedy gear, cheating death, and looking for their next hit. For most, it's viewed as an insane activity you do once, maybe attached to someone else. But for those select few who get their license, keep jumping, and for me, end up in an environment like Skydive Arizona, it transitions to a dream, to be the best in the sport. If I want to be the best, I need to live and be around the best. I remember thinking that one night as I camped out at the drop zone. And Skydive Arizona is where I stayed. I slowly transitioned from working at the restaurant to the gear store, supported by the love of many along the way. I devoted my entire life savings to training and coaching, getting basic experience flying my body and time under a parachute as if it were an education. There are many disciplines in the sport, but I naturally gravitated to canopy piloting, colloquially known as swooping. There was just something about flying a parachute and learning how every little movement changes the flight characteristics that I loved. Without getting into too much detail, canopy piloting competitions involve diving a high-performance parachute, planing out feet above the ground, which is monitored by a laser, entering a course, and then scoring in different ways based on the category of the jump. This is a video of my coach to just show a first-person view of what it looks like when you do a competition round. Watching pilots travel at speeds upwards of 100 miles an hour just inches above the ground with a walk-off landing was mesmerizing. I would spend hours watching the various local talent land, studying their technique and style. At about 500 jumps, I walked up to the person who had become my best friend and coach in the sport, Travis. I told him I had watched him for a long time and thought he was an amazing swooper. I told him I wanted to be the best canopy pilot in the world. I told him I would show up rain or shine for training. I told him I wanted him to be my coach. I was his first student, and he graciously took me under his wing. I joke with him now that I was a good talent scout, considering he's one of the top canopy pilots in the world and part of the PD Factory team, the best of the best. Outside of his competitive duties, he's a military contractor at Flight 1, teaching our most elite special operations members how to fly parachutes. Nonetheless, I began my canopy piloting journey. The discipline is inherently dangerous. You are diving a parachute towards the ground. Of the limited fatalities in the sport that occur each year, a percentage are from individuals making low turns, often on parachutes outside their skill levels, impacting the ground. I knew this. I respected this. That's why I turned to training and a logical progression. Coaching days would be spent with Travis on the ground, filming my landings, followed by debriefs. Every other day of the week, weather permitting, I would be at the drop zone making upwards of 10 jumps, sharpening my skills. I received the nickname 5K, as all my jumps would be hop and pops. I had that first seat by the door, and I'd exit at 5,000 feet, deploying my parachute immediately so I could have the sky to myself, while all the other jumpers would travel to 13,000 feet for freefall. To say I was driven was an understatement. The raw power of passion I had for the sport was immeasurable. I was an athlete, and nothing was going to stop me. Everything else in my life just fell into place. Now, with over 1,700 jumps, I would wake up at 4 a.m., go for a 6-mile run, then attend the local community college, filling in classes to fulfill my prerequisites, then head to the drop zones and do some jumps, then lift weights, then study. I was a machine. A few times a year, the U.S. Army Golden Knights visited to train for a few weeks. Always having the desire to serve in the back of my mind and realizing the Golden Knights had a canopy piloting team, that was my next step. Working out with some of them after a day of jumping, I expressed my interest in joining the team and decided on an enlistment date after finishing my classes. A few weeks before my target date, the 2012 canopy piloting circuit began. After all the time spent with Travis and all the training, I was ready to begin my competitive career, to take that leap of faith. On February 15th, 2012, I went to school and took an organic chemistry exam, returned home to pack up my vehicle for the drive to California, where the competition was that weekend, then headed to the drop zone for a few last practice jumps. Travis was there, alongside Jeffro, a Red Bull jumper. After landing, there was time for one more before sunset, so I packed my parachute, boarded the tram out to the runway, climbed into my seat near the door, and headed for 5,000 feet. It was a beautiful afternoon, the sun beginning to make its way over the mountains in the distance, creating a red-orange glow. I exited the aircraft, deployed my parachute, flew my landing pattern, and prepared for the turn. That is all I remember. Travis experienced the whole thing, and I can tell that it hurts him to this day when we discuss it. He took me under his wing, taught me, and invested me so much as a coach and a true friend. I started my diving turn, bulleting towards the ground. All I needed to do was a minor adjustment to plane out the canopy, but for some reason I didn't. Realizing I was low to the ground, I instinctively raised my legs to give myself more room, but nevertheless slammed into the hard Arizona desert, my lower back bearing the brunt of the impact. I bounced about 30 feet in the air, still flying my canopy, then slammed again into the ground, limply tumbling until eventually coming to rest. I suffered a spinal cord injury alongside many other spinal and bodily fractures and was paralyzed immediately. I don't remember much, except for Travis standing above me, trying to keep me awake. A German doctor on vacation skydiving rushed over as well to assess the situation. The extraordinary levels of pain coupled with traumatic shock is indescribable. With my head resting in the dirt and the view of my best friend coming in and out of focus, I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to die, and I'm okay. It'll be all right. Before closing my eyes. One sec. I was life-flighted via helicopter to Phoenix, where I underwent overnight emergency surgery. I spent over a week in ICU surrounded by Justin, who left law school in Los Angeles to catch the next flight over, Travis, and other friends. But I was mostly unaware of my situation. It wasn't until I transferred to a step-down unit and was in a more lucid state that I began to come to the realization that my life was never going to be the same. My biggest passion, my biggest dreams, all the years of focus and grit was ripped away in a split second. Not because I didn't have the dedication or skills, but because my body was gone. When most people think of paralysis or see someone in a wheelchair, they equate the disability with simply not being able to walk. Sure, the mobility aspect is clear, but every single autonomic bodily function is affected as well. I was never going to walk again. I was never going to urinate normally again, and it would require using catheters. I was never going to defecate normally again, I was never going to have sex again. And the excruciating nerve pain I was feeling, that may never go away either. I remember vividly being helped onto the toilet by 2 nurses, followed by one of them inserting her finger in my rectum to teach me how to manage my bowels. I lost it. I can't do this. I want to die. To be honest, looking back on the years of skydiving, my thought processes were binary. I would live a long and happy life, focusing on safety and enjoying the sport until I was too old and too frail to participate, or I would die in an accident. Not once did I consider the strange limbo of surviving a catastrophic injury and becoming permanently disabled. But there I was, thrown into the blackest pit of depression. Still, every afternoon following physical therapy, when I returned to my hospital bed, I take out my laptop, researching opportunities in places around the country to help me recover. Albeit flickering, that flame deep inside me was still alive, still pushing me towards a new path yet to be discovered. One evening, I stumbled across Neuroworks, the Neurorehabilitation Center here in Sandy, Utah, co-founded by Dr. Dale Hull, a previous WCF speaker, and Dr. Jan Black. Dale's watching by live stream, I think, and Jan's here in the audience today. I was discharged to home 2 months after my accident, dropped back into my past life as a completely different person with a broken body and broken mind. I would wake up to the rumbling sound of aircraft and parachutes snapping open against the sky, peel back the blinds to parachutes in formation against the backdrop of sunrise, and just cry. I knew I had to leave. Neuroworks was my next leap of faith, so I packed up, left Arizona, and closed that chapter of my life forever, a life I so dearly miss. I was graciously provided a Neuroworks apartment to rent out when I arrived in Utah. During the weeks, I attended physical therapy, and every once in a while after my sessions ended, rolled into Dale's office without notice to talk. Our conversations began at surface level, but eventually transitioned to deeper and sometimes darker conversations about thoughts of suicide and coping with the permanence of paralysis. I was hurting for direction, for purpose. Dale gave me that. He recognized my despair and never challenged it while offering his story through paralysis and moving forward. He invited me to family events, I imagined to instill some sense of positivity in my life and show there are reasons to live. To this day, I consider him my spinal cord injury dad, one of the individuals who truly brought me back. Around this time, I also randomly connected with my aunt and uncle in Park City, who are also here today. A few winters growing up, I stayed with them on vacation to ski, but we never spoke much otherwise. That all changed one evening when they picked me up to watch some stand-up comedy. I'm not so sure what they saw in me, but from that moment never left. They have treated me like a son, believed in me, given me so much support and love. They too brought me back. When I knew it was time to leave Neuroworks, I moved in with my aunt and uncle. I can't pinpoint the exact moment when I surfaced from that pit of depression, but I made it out. For me, being a goal and decision-oriented person by nature, it was a combination of time adjusting to a new normal and 2 distinct thoughts. If this is how it's going to be, I need to make the best of it, and I can still be a vet. What's funny is that second thought originally occurred early on in my accident. As I was in the hospital bed investigating neurorehabilitation centers, I was simultaneously thinking about what to do with my life. I just couldn't help myself. As a child, my dream was to become a veterinarian, but that faded away over the years. Although most would brush off a statement like, I can still be a vet, from an individual with no college degree who was just permanently paralyzed days prior as delusional, I wonder if that's what kept the flame alive. I like to think it is. Over the next few months, I dabbled in lots of things. I returned to the slopes and started sit skiing. I took part in one of the first para-bobsled developmental training programs in Park City, and then traveled to Latvia for more. I crashed a bobsled with my uncle in it and sent him to the hospital. Ask him about it later. He loves to tell that story and wanted me to include it in the speech. I traveled to Maryland with the USA wheelchair lacrosse team to take part in the Ocean City Classic tournament. And most life-changing, I received my first canine companion service dog, Corky. At the end of 2013, a year and a half post-injury, with the dream of becoming a veterinarian as my North Star, I applied to the University of Arizona in Tucson, where my credits would transfer easily, was accepted, and moved back south. Where am I? The next few years were difficult, but very rewarding. I began to come into my own, fully accepting my new identity as a paraplegic and my new life. I juggled the everlasting health issues associated with the spinal cord injury, especially nerve pain. I live in pain 24/7. I don't know what it's like to live without pain. Some days it's excruciating at the point of torture, while others it's a background annoyance. But it's always there. Nonetheless, requiring multiple medications and finding the balance between pain control and lucidity, especially in the context of intellectual endeavors, is something I battle to this day. During the summer of 2015, as a senior, I took the entrance exam for veterinary medical colleges and spent months crafting my application. And on December 15th of that year, Corky and I crossed the stage to receive a degree in nutritional sciences and biochemistry, while later that evening, receiving a letter one only dreams about. Dear Bernard, I am pleased to inform you that you have been accepted for a position in our Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program at Colorado State University for the entering class of fall 2016. I was on cloud nine. It seemed like my life had finally turned around. Sure, it was much different than before, but things were moving in the right direction, and my health was relatively stable. Positive thoughts continued through the summer of 2016, when I traveled to Purdue University's School of Aviation in Indiana to take part in the Able Flight Scholarship, a 6-week intensive training program for individuals with disabilities to receive their pilot's license. That was one of the most gratifying and incredible opportunities of my life. Even I surprised myself with the thought, I love my life, as I rolled to the dorms after a day of flying. It had been a long time in the making, that thought. I returned home to Arizona shortly after and prepared for the move to Fort Collins, Colorado. I was about to begin veterinary medical school. I knew my spinal cord injury would present unique obstacles above and beyond the average vet student experience, but I never expected the uphill medical battle I was about to face. Vet school is ridiculously hard. To average it out, it's about 6 to 8 classes per semester, with 1 to 3 exams per week for the first 3 years, followed by 4th year of clinics, national boards, and the growing day-to-day patient responsibility within the hospital as you grow from student to clinician. It is a trying time for any individual, disability or not. My battle began the first semester with a small pressure sore from the abrupt change to sitting over 17 hours a day in my wheelchair. Skin health is a cornerstone of spinal cord injury education. Imagine losing all the muscle on your butt. Then imagine losing all sensation to the area. That is a recipe for disaster. If skin remains in the presence of high pressure for too long, blood supply to the area is compromised, the tissue dies, and a wound forms. Yeah. Good boy. This is the equivalent of bed sores in the older population, but in a paralyzed individual results from the loss of anatomic cushioning and the ability to both sense and move to relieve pressure. My wheelchair cushion was modified and the wound closed, but what appeared healed from the surface veiled infection and abscessation beneath. Over the next 6 months, bacteria ate away at my muscle and deeper structures, slowly progressing to the bones of my pelvis. I became sick regularly throughout the first semester, yet chalked it up to stress from vet school. In spring 2017, the abscess abruptly ruptured while visiting my aunt and uncle over spring break. In septicemic shock, I was rushed into surgery, emerging with a gaping, unhealable wound over 3 inches in diameter, exposing bone, muscle, and nerve. Against the behest of my doctors, I vowed to continue my education. Every morning, home health nurses came to flush, drain, and pack the wound before I proceeded to sit directly on it for full days of school. With the green light from my infectious diseases team, I administered my own IV antibiotic infusions in class so I could continue attending lecture. Nevertheless, I was extremely sick, barely overcoming severe fatigue from infection and a compromised immune system, compounded by the enormous demands of vet school. The most insane experience took place during my final exam in neuroanatomy. I entered the anatomy lab for the practical portion of the exam, immediately greeted with, "You look terrible and need to go to the hospital," from my professor. I refused, and after powering through the 3-hour exam, my friend drove me to the hospital. I checked in with 104-degree fever and septic, staying another week for testing and monitoring. Rinse and repeat with events like this for the remainder of the spring semester. I have absolutely no idea how I managed, but I somehow completed my first year of vet school. Due to the size and nature of the wound and its proclivity to stay infected, surgical intervention was recommended. So, days after my last final exam, I underwent my first muscle flap surgery, which involved surgeons cutting one of the remaining hamstring muscles from my left stump and utilizing it to fill the space left behind from the abscess. I spent nearly 3 months confined to a single hospital bed during recovery. Flap surgeries are notoriously difficult to heal in the paralyzed population. with sitting tolerance increasing excruciatingly slow by seconds over the course of months. Still on IV antibiotics at the time of discharge, I returned home in July and mentally prepared for second year. At least now I'll be able to perform better without a pressure sore dictating my every move, I thought. The first day of second year, I woke up early to lift weights. Leaving the rec center restroom mid-workout, I adjusted my gym shorts and felt something wet on the rear waistline. I ventured back into the stall, closed the door, and reached down. Blood-tinged fluid covered my hand. By the time I reached the hospital and had time to process the situation, I realized the flap had failed. The wound was open again, this time with deeper draining tracts extending up my body in multiple directions. About a week and a half later, I went septic again, informed that the wound and urine cultures grew multiple species and strains of resistant bacteria. The previous surgeon did not obtain clean margins. I was, for all intents and purposes, sewn back up with infection remaining, allowing it to fester and progress over the summer. I was this time very, very sick. I tried taking my first week of exams, but it was too much. I remember texting the associate dean of the vet school from my hospital bed. I can't do this anymore. I have to withdraw from the class of 2020. That was a heart-wrenching moment. The first year of vet school forges unique bonds through trial by fire. The class was my family, and I had to say goodbye, watching them move on as I found myself once again at a different hospital in a different state surrounded by those same sterile walls. I cried. Why? Why is it that no matter what I choose to pursue, no matter how hard I work my ass off, I end up here? What is the point anymore? I remember looking up at the hospital ceiling, seeing shadows, and imagining spinal cord injury personified. This was the last stanza of a poem I wrote that evening, titled Dear Spinal Cord Injury. There's many nights when I awaken and see your demonic shadow across my ceiling, and I think to myself, will tomorrow be the end of your fun when you come and take me? I had long escaped the claws of depression, but I was really angry. I was sad. I felt defeated. That winter, by the time a brand new team of surgeons and doctors assembled to accept my case at Anschutz Medical Campus in Denver, MRSA had invaded my pelvis, and at the end of 2017, underwent a hemipelvectomy. My remaining left leg was amputated all the way to my body wall, and the entire left side of my pelvis was removed. Another quarter of a year confined to a hospital bed. But in all honesty, it wasn't as difficult the second time around. And finally, after nearly 11 months of combined hospital stays, 6 episodes of sepsis, double-digit surgical procedures, 1.5 years of big gun IV antibiotic therapy, and loss of large portions of my body, I left the hospital on Valentine's Day 2018 for the last time. I shouldn't have survived, according to most of my doctors I've spoken to. I guess I'm a cat, I tell them, and must be on my 9th life at this point. I restarted second year in 2018 with the class of 2021. We survived and made it to third year, transitioning to the hospital for morning clinics and afternoon cases. We survived, but my companion and my best friend did not. I lost Corky to an aggressive cancer in January 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic. Even so, we rolled directly into fourth year with no more summer break, beginning our clinical training. We worked long hours, but survived, simultaneously studying for boards. In December, I sat for the North American Veterinary Licensing Examination, and on January 15th, laid on my bed and shakily clicked through the webpage to view my report. As I read the capitalized letters PASS, I fell into my pillow in disbelief, thinking back to that broken man lying in the Arizona desert, his life in shambles. On May 13th, 2021, I crossed the stage at CSU and became the first doctor of veterinary medicine in a wheelchair in the program's 114-year history. I can still be a vet, I thought 9 years ago. Now I am one. So why am I here today, telling you my story? When I accepted this speaking engagement, I didn't quite know why, to be completely honest. I don't think of myself as anyone particularly special. I'm just a dude, one of 330 million individuals across this country. One of 330 million individuals who have experienced loss. One of 330 million individuals who have been lost. One of 330 million individuals on a path through this difficult but equally miraculous journey we call life. However, while writing this, I began to highlight recurrent themes rising to the surface, themes not only important for others to see, but for me to deconstruct with you. 1, you cannot do it alone. From my father, who told me to relentlessly chase my dreams, to Margie at Skydive Arizona, who gave me my first job there and a roof over my head, to Travis, who became a friend, a mentor, and passed down his canopy piloting knowledge to me, to Dale, who rehabbed both my body and my mind, to my aunt and uncle, who loved me unconditionally and like a son, to CSU Vet School, accepting me and continually investing in me. The list goes on and on. Reflect back on those who loved you and helped you along the way. The list is surely longer than you think. Loss hurts, whether a parent, a friend, a pet, or your body. The pain is real. It is not reflective of your inability to move on or you being weak. It takes time to process and work through. The feelings and emotions will become easier to live with and transition to acceptance as time progresses. Even so, the pain will always be there to some extent. You just won't respond to it in the same way. Eventually, acceptance will afford you a wealth of knowledge and wisdom about life. It will make you stronger. It will lead you to your next steps. It will allow you to eventually help others. Education. Through sport, trade, art, or an intellectual endeavor, seeking knowledge and instruction from experts is the key to success. Your desire to grow and become a better version of yourself is wholly intertwined with the knowledge and education you receive. Choose your mentors wisely. Be humble. Question everything. Challenge your own beliefs. Realize there is always more to know. Determination. Keep on going. I know it can sound so incredibly and almost patronizingly cliche, but I mean it. There are moments in my life where I was about to quit, even end my own life. I'm very glad I did not. The journey through adversity and the decision to keep moving in the face of challenge will lead to your eventual and inevitable success. When clients see me as a doctor, most see the individual qualified to treat their pet. When I see myself as a doctor, I see the journey and determination that led to the title. There is no success without the journey, and there is no journey without the determination to take it. What you are accepting today houses all but the last theme. You have chosen to move forward in light of unbelievable tragedy, the loss of a parent or a loved one. You reached out with the understanding that you can't go about this life alone. In return, WCF and all the wonderful individuals within that organization reached out as well, taking your collective hands and gifting you a wonderful scholarship to follow your educational dreams in the direction of a better future. As I said at the start, the rest is up to you. I believe in you. You are loved and supported by so many people. You are stronger than you think. Know that whatever path you choose and whatever profession you decide to pursue, determination will lead you there. So take that next step and make that leap of faith. Thank you.